Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Policy and Rights, and this is a special interview. And let me start off by saying this. We're hearing a lot about corporate greed and how certain elected officials keep going on and on about how we need to end the corporate greed that exists in our society. Well, when is there going to be action towards that? When are we going to see something serious happen to take a bite out of that corporate greed? The only way that's really going to happen is if we all start speaking out against what is happening. How limits are put to our lives because we accept a paycheck. How our dreams are crushed because, well, our boss doesn't want us to live a dream. The large corporations want to earn wealth from off of everything that we do. And I do mean everything, including die, as you're going to hear in this next interview. That profit is one thing, raping another person's pocket and spirit is something else. And we hear all the time of we need to get the corporations out of senior care. We need to get keep a social way of administering medicine. If you're listening from the U.S., we keep hearing how we need to have a national health care system, how we need to have better control over some of the expenses that are out there. And yet, our government, our elected officials, do nothing about it. So, I want to introduce you to the author of It's Your Funeral. It is a book that is based on a very same story that the movie The Burial has just released. That the story about the O'Keeffes against a large corporate entity that was literally raping us as we were trying to bury our loved ones. We're going to hear from Tom Crean, the author of It's Your Funeral, talk about how he managed to push back against the corporations and save a group of family-owned funeral homes that simply want to serve the community because that is their purpose. To help us honor our loved ones in a loving way and an affordable way. And in some cases, maybe even a heavenly way. So why don't we bring Tom Crean on the show and let's hear what really happened with the O'Keeffes and what really is going on with corporate greed in the funeral home industry. Okay, so Tom, why did you write the book? It's your funeral.
Well, to be candid, Michael, I arrived in funeral service quite suddenly when my uncle, who was only 52, dropped dead, and there was nobody to carry on the family business. And we were serving, like, the year he died, 1975, we served 60 families. Was barely enough to keep the doors open. So I was in my fourth year of philosophy at UBC and just quit school cold turkey to take over the family business, and was astonished to find that all these family businesses that my family had been competing with for by that time almost 70 years were all being bought out by these nameless conglomerates. And these conglomerates would charge way more money and cut back half their staff and provide half the service. So all of a sudden, I discovered that in order to survive, I had to draw a distinction between publicly traded funeral companies and family funeral homes. And so I wrote the book as an explanation of why there's really no place in my mind for public companies in funeral service.
Yeah, it just feeds into that large cauldron of corporate greed that needs to find some limits. You know, so why re-release the book? In this past month, you just re-released the book. So why the re-release?
Well, I think that the book is a very important contextual support for the great film that Amazon is bringing out called The Burial. The Amazon film shows the unlikely partnership between my buddy Jeremiah O'Keefe and the very sassy, provocative, but successful Afro-American lawyer that he hired out of Florida to take the Lowen Group to task for the way they were treating his Mississippi clientele.
Mm. So were they doing the same thing in Mississippi that you described here in Vancouver? Raise the prices and provide less service?
Exactly right. Being a public company isn't cheap.
No, that is very true. But being a public company can also bring, especially to the chief executive officer and the board of directors, large paychecks.
Well, I went to the Lowen bankruptcy in Wilmington, Delaware, and I'd get out of my taxi from the Holiday Inn, and then behind me the limousine would pull up, and all the bankruptcy executive from the Lowen Group would pour out of their limousines. They weren't taking much time to save money for their shareholders.
I like that. They poured out of their limousines. It's not like they drove up in, say, a Toyota Curcell or something like that, right?
Nope.
So you're kind of reminding me of the auto industry with when all of the big names in the auto industry showed up in Washington to ask for bailout money, and they all climbed out of their Learjets in Washington to ask for bailout money because they were going poor, but they could fly a Learjet, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
So it is the same pattern of corporate greed.
Yeah, and disrespect for the shareholder.
Yeah. So, um, with that being said, you appeared in Ottawa, um, and you successfully pushed back against some of the corporate happenings in Canada with the home funeral, with the family-owned funeral home industry, right?
Yeah, we opposed the biggest funeral conglomerate, Service Corporation International, out of Houston, Texas, trademarking in both Canada and the United States the phrase family funeral care. And we were successful in defeating them in Ottawa. We pointed out that these companies were the opposite of family funeral care. And then when we won that trademark battle in April of 2003, I sent that news release to 18 independent groups in the United States that I'd been working with.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them had supported my trademark opposition to speak of in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
But the day they saw that Canada beat SCI, they all joined. So we had thousands of funeral homes by the time it went to court in Washington, D.C., and we beat Service Corporation in Washington as well in 2007.
Yeah.
We Canadians embarrassed our American peers into standing up for themselves.
Well, on a different note, though, a lot of people are afraid to push back against the corporations. They think something bad is going to happen to them, don't they?
Well, exactly, and that's, I think, why there's such a reign of terror purveyed upon the people by Wall Street, because they think that their economic force makes them more right than we the people, but that fails to take into account what really built these countries, which was we the people.
Exactly, right?
Exactly.
That we the people, we have a voice, but we need to exercise that voice.
Well, I have to tell you, Michael, that I've prayed a great deal in my struggles against Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I've now had 5 battles with the billionaires, and I've beaten them 5 times. And in truth, it was me praying my brains out and being told by my creator where to step each day. All my partners gave up on me during the campaign, saying, Tom, if only you'd told us what you were doing, we could have supported you. But it was a journey of faith, Michael. I had no idea what I was doing. How could I tell anybody? I just prayed my brains out, and every day was told where to step the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, 5 battles with the billionaires and beat them 5 times. And all of that was due to prayer.
Yeah.
I'm not this smart.
Yeah, sometimes we have to submit to that higher power, right?
Well, and not only that, a true journey of faith is incredibly exciting. It's really, really exciting to have no idea where you're going.
Mm. So, what do you want to see for the funeral industry overall?
Well, first of all, I don't consider us an industry. Wall Street does, but I consider us a profession.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, I think it's vital that people know whether they're dealing with a public company conglomerate or they're dealing with a local family funeral home. We local family funeral homes don't have any assets beside the credibility of our name.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't serve our community, we don't exist. Whereas the public companies, all they've got is a stock average. And so if they're not making profit each day, they don't exist. And that's what I'm saying, is that there's no place at all for that kind of a business model in caring for grieving citizens who just couldn't possibly be any more vulnerable.
Well, the loss of a loved one, it doesn't matter if it's mom, dad, wife, husband, child. It's all emotionally the same. That you're cut down at your knees, right?
Yep.
And the last thing you need is some funeral director who is money grubbing and just kicks you and just kicks you in the gut on top of that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And these Wall Street conglomerates, think that they've won the lottery, discovering that grieving clients are completely vulnerable. They go around buying these family funeral homes because a lot of them are downtown properties where the humble families that operate the funeral homes can never hope to make any kind of return in funeral service to justify the millions of dollars in land that they've got invested and tied up. So really, these big funeral conglomerates are in the real estate business. They're not in funeral service. That's my opinion.
Well, what does it mean to be in funeral service? What does it mean how you treat your client?
Well, what it means is that somebody has a deep personal loss in their family, and they come and they knock on your door, and you help escort them through that deeply painful process, that deeply painful transition. But if all you're going to be judged by is the amount of sales you make from that person, basically caring for them and caring for yourself are mutually exclusive.
Yeah. So I heard this as a story, and that a grieving son, his mother died, and he wanted to honor her in the best way possible, and he spent thousands of dollars for the casket, and for her to be laid out in a certain way and everything. And in the end, the mother was cremated, and he spent say a couple of $10,000 for this particular funeral. Now, granted, I know he wanted to honor his mother, and expenses at that point, you're like, how can I put a limit to what I'm willing to pay to honor my mother, right? But at the same time, isn't there, if you're on the other side of the counter collecting the money, you're the one taking the fees, didn't you put a limit to what you're going to charge?
Well, to me, when I sit down with a family to arrange a funeral service, I view it like I'm an artist, a painter, and my palette of paints is the emotions of the family. So what I'm trying to do is to paint the most complete portrait of the life of the deceased. And to me, a fundamental component of that is to discover what resources the family have to put towards the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people walk in the door of my funeral home telling me they want the most expensive casket in the world.
Okay.
That's not a family that I'm bending over backwards trying to save money for, because they got more money than they can spend. But to me, the average family coming in has a certain set of parameters which they can work within. So once I find out what the kind of parameters they have to work with, then I can start to make suggestions to get us close to achieving the most meaningful service as possible. And there's now, like when it comes to cremation, there's a number of areas that my profession has adapted itself to, which help the families. For example, our most popular casket for cremation families is a rental casket. where they have a wooden interior, and then you put a beautiful wooden sort of it's almost like it's a covering really, so that the public all sees this beautiful wooden casket. But what goes to the crematorium is a very simple, plain, usually a particle board box. But nobody sees that because the casket's beautifully draped. And so there are ways that the profession is figuring out how to honor families' wishes without spending more money than is necessary.
Yeah.
But to me, the more complete that painting is, the more vital and the more value what I've provided has.
And that makes sense. That makes sense rather than, how much can I soak this family for? From
my point of view,
mm-hmm.
my family, since 1908, my family has focused on getting the maximum amount of value out of the minimum amount of money, and that's why we're the only family funeral home left in the city of Vancouver. In fact, at the 100th anniversary of the BC Funeral Association, it was also the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever the bizarre convention arranger was decided to serve us the same lunch at the 100th anniversary funeral convention as they served the families, the passengers on the Titanic. I don't know who the convention organizer was. Seemed to me it was more of a horror production. Anyway, that evening at the dinner, all of these past presidents of the Funeral Association, most of whom I've embarrassed in the media, because everybody knows I don't lie to reporters to protect people that I think belong in prison. And all of these past presidents who don't like me very much had to make room because my family was the only founding member of the BC Funeral Association still in business. That's our creator's sense of humor.
That is God's sense of humor on that one. So
that was a great day for the National Funeral Press.
Yeah, I know that your family has a property not too far away from our studio office here in Surrey, BC, right?
Yeah.
And it's instilled in everybody that works in that family business that value to the client in honoring the loved one that is lost, rather than we got to make a profit.
Absolutely. To me, that portrait of the deceased, that's my signature. How do I engineer for that family the most meaningful farewell that's physically possible?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's times when we've done services for free because the family had no resources. That's not that often in Canada because the government has support for people that don't have resources. But we've still done them.
Yeah.
We don't turn anyone away.
Yeah. What does it mean to you to serve the community?
It's why I was born. My profession, like I just consider myself so unbelievably privileged to be given this profession. And I add to that my profession for my entire working lifetime has been under threat from these external forces that are only profit driven. And so I just, can't tell you how proud I am of 50 years of standing up against this monstrosity. I'm so proud of the contribution that I've been empowered to make. And again, I add, it's all a journey of faith because I'm not this smart. I've been gifted by prayer with exactly what to do to beat these companies 5 times in a row.
Yeah. That's an amazing track record because there's
I'm sorry?
that's an amazing track record and it can't be done without some other power getting involved, right?
No question.
So
And the interesting thing about my past is that today, as all our information systems are crumbling, like everybody and their brother thinks they're an activist. Whereas I really am. I've been an activist because 50 years ago I learned that the people who ran Big Funeral Service were a bunch of mafia goons.
yeah. And you wrote the book for that reason.
Book. It's Your Funeral.
Yeah.
How grieving families are exploited and how to stop it.
Well, in your opinion, what is the best way that we can eliminate the shackles that this corporate greed puts on us?
Well, the most important thing is that it's required by law that these conglomerates admit which companies they own, because what they do is they try to pretend they're the original owners. We call it stealth ownership.
Mm-hmm.
You got to ask, who owns your funeral home? Is it some foreign conglomerate or is it your local family? It's the most important question you can ask.
Well, yeah, I see that because
it's your choice. You can go and be personally cared for by people that are the same mindset as me, or you can be part of the funeral factory.
Well, let's go to at it this way, right? That maybe in some cases that the guy comes in or woman, doesn't matter. They come into your business and they say, "Hey, mom, dad, brother, sister has passed away, and I need help taking care of this." Right? The odds are, if the funeral home is family owned and exists in the community, that they know who the person is to begin with. Especially if it's the funeral home up the street from where this person grew up all their life, right?
Right.
Doesn't that have an effect on you? Have some sort of, if you've seen this person like go to the grocery store or something like that, did you have somewhat of an emotional stake in that because you're part of that community? Then the corporate guy the corporate owned funeral home doesn't have that same stake, does it?
Well, a big part of the corporate presence is to simulate the family presence. So when a corporation comes in and buys the funeral home, they try really hard to keep the original family working there.
Mm-hmm.
But the prices are still increased a great deal. I think the last comparative price list I saw was Vanity Fair magazine like 20 years ago, and on average, I think the average funeral back then sold for $3,500, and on average the chains were $1,300 more expensive. Mm-hmm. So that's like 50%.
Wow.
So no matter who you're dealing with, you got to understand what kind of system you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. You may still be talking to the original family owners, but they've got very little to do with how it's run anymore. But in support of my family funeral homes, I need to say that at the peak of funeral consolidation, which was about the year 2000, Service Corp International had 5,200 funeral homes and cemeteries. The Lowen Group had 1,700, and Stewart Enterprises had 500. Those were the big three chains. So of those 7,000 and change funeral homes, the last time I looked, Service Corp International had bought Stewart and the Alderwoods Group, which was the name that Lowen emerged from bankruptcy with, and we're down to 1,200 funeral homes and cemeteries. So of all of the funeral homes and cemeteries that the three chains had bought from the family funeral homes, or in my lingo, of all of the funeral homes Wall Street stole from the family funeral homes, we independents have clawed back 70% of them. And I defy any sector of the economy to show me that kind of performance in defending their communities. Now, most of my funeral home friends didn't do that by going out like I did and starting a family funeral home movement to educate the public to the difference. Most of them just woke up in the morning and did the right thing. But when you show up in small town America or small town Canada, and all of a sudden the prices are doubled and half the staff are let go, the small towns figure it out. And they've sent those funeral homes packing. So I'm incredibly proud of the way that we family funeral homes have defended our communities, even though you're hard put to find, a single family funeral home who knows that, because they just kept doing what they'd always done, which was the right thing.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. In your opinion, you successfully pushed back against 5 times against large corporate ownership and everything. In our times that we're seeing right now with the economy and the inflation being what it is, in your opinion, do you think that we can push back and successfully teach other corporations and CEOs that, hey, we're not going to stand for them just raping our pockets, and we're just not going to take it anymore, and either you service at a reasonable cost or we're going somewhere else?
Well, Michael, in truth, I've devoted my entire life to trying to organize independent business.
Mm-hmm.
And you may be aware of a group I started in Vancouver working with all of the different end-of-life care community groups. It's called the Partners in Care Alliance Society. And yes, that's what helped me win all of these battles with the billionaires in my city. But sadly, I just went on a tour of 3 funeral conventions, talking to independents at each of these conventions about us standing up and trying to organize an independent business front for family funeral homes.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get any interest at all from my peers, because in each of their communities, those groups have been successful. So they don't see any need to organize against Wall Street. Whereas in my town, I'm the only one left. We had to organize against Wall Street, but, if the consensus of my profession is nobody gives a hoot, well, then we probably can't continue the Partners in Care Alliance either. I'm waiting to hear from the local hospices here whether they want to carry on with what we've been doing the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, the public here knows
mm-hmm.
the differences there, but that's not the case in any other of the cities in North America. Generally, to me, the target cities are cities with more than 1 million people, because that's where the cutoff is for big business to become anonymous. In
Yeah.
small towns, everybody figures it out.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, um, thank you for joining us today, Tom, and I hope everybody goes out. You can find it on Amazon. Um, it's Your Funeral is the name of the book, and the official author is Thomas P.J. Crean. Is that correct?
Yep,
So,
and it's available on Amazon.
yeah. So go get your copy of the book, and it actually the book itself, from what I've read so far, it does kind of paint a picture of some of the reasons why the cost of living is what it is right now, and how we can actually maybe put an end to it, and win some of our hard-earned dreams back again from large corporations. So, again, Tom, thanks for joining us. It's been an honor to have you.
Thank you, Michael. I just want to really recommend to people that they take the time to check out the movie The Burial, being listed on Amazon, I think, on the 13th of October. Is that correct, Michael?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and the film begs a very interesting question, and that is, what is the power of the people? The people were able to exercise a punitive vote in the Mississippi courts that just, it was the most blinding flash of democracy I've ever seen in my entire life. But to me, it was well earned. So see Tommy Lee Jones and Jamie Foxx in The Burial. But if you want to know some background, check out my book.
All right. All right. Thanks again, Tom. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Michael.
And we will see you next time with another special interview here on Policy and Rights. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.